Evan Calder never thought an ordinary afternoon could change the course of two great civilizations. He was only 16, a human boy from the quiet colony world of Havenreach, where life moved slowly and the most exciting thing that happened was the yearly harvest parade. Havenreach was not a place where grand adventures normally began. It was a place of small farms, dusty markets, and quiet roads that wound between solar panel fields. Evan liked the quiet. He liked watching the evening sky turn purple and gold as the twin moons rose. He liked fixing broken machines for neighbors, even when they could barely afford to pay him. He liked helping people, not because he wanted praise, but because it felt right. But unknown to him, across the stars, the Drakor Dominion home of the Grand Dragon species was facing rising tensions. A peace mission had been arranged, but trouble brewed in the shadows. None of that was on Evan's mind as he headed into town that day, humming a small tune and pushing his old hoverboard beside him because its battery had died again. The air was warm. The market was full. People were calling out prices. Children were running between stalls, and vendors were arguing cheerfully. Evan smiled at the familiar sounds. He loved how alive the town felt on market days. He needed a replacement battery cell, so he walked to the electronics stall run by an elderly man named Mr. Halden. After paying for the part and tucking it into his backpack, Evan began making his way toward the bus stop. He was planning to fix his hoverboard before sunset. That was when he noticed something strange. At the far edge of the market, near the supply warehouse, a figure in a long, dark coat was moving quickly through the crowd. The figure kept their hood low, hiding their face, and seemed to be trying not to be noticed. Havenreach rarely saw visitors from other worlds, but this person's movements felt different. Careful, alert. Evan wasn't the only one who noticed. A second figure had appeared behind the hooded one, moving even more quietly. This second person kept one hand inside their coat, and their eyes stayed locked on the hooded figure's back. Evan frowned. Something felt wrong. He wasn't sure what, but his instincts whispered that the hooded person might be in danger. He glanced around, expecting someone else to notice. But everyone was busy bargaining, chatting, or carrying baskets of food. No one paid attention. The hooded figure stepped into a quieter alley behind the warehouse. The second figure followed. Evan's heartbeat quickened. He knew he had no proof something bad was about to happen. He knew he shouldn't get involved. His parents always told him to be careful, because Havenreach had very limited emergency services. If someone got hurt, help didn't arrive quickly. But Evan also knew that if he walked away and something happened, he'd never forgive himself. So he took a slow breath and followed. The alley was narrow, filled with wooden crates and old supply containers. Sunlight barely reached the ground. The hooded figure had paused halfway down, perhaps sensing the presence behind them. The second figure stepped closer, their movements tense and deliberate. Evan's chest tightened. He still couldn't see their faces, but he felt the tension in the air, like a storm ready to break. "Hey!" Evan called out, his voice louder than he expected. "Is everything okay?" The hooded figure spun around instantly, startled. Under the hood, Evan caught a glimpse of strangely bright eyes, almost glowing, but not in a way he could describe easily. The figure seemed stronger, taller, and more graceful than any human he had seen, but his attention snapped away when the second figure finally revealed what was inside their coat. A metallic object. A weapon. Evan's breath froze. It wasn't fired yet, but the intention was clear. The attacker pointed it toward the hooded figure, who instinctively stepped back. "Stop!" Evan shouted without thinking, and without giving himself time to reconsider, he ran forward. He did not think about danger. He did not think about consequences. He only thought, someone is about to get hurt. Evan rushed between the two figures just as a small flash of light burst from the weapon. There was a sharp sound, loud but not unbearable. Evan felt a sudden force, like being pushed hard from behind, and then his legs gave out beneath him. The world tilted. He didn't understand at first. He didn't feel pain, just a strange numbness, as if his body had forgotten where it was. The hooded figure gasped and caught Evan before he could fall sideways onto the ground. Their arms were unexpectedly strong, almost impossibly strong, and Evan was lowered gently, carefully, as if he were something precious. The attacker cursed under their breath and ran off. Evan heard footsteps fading into the distance, but he couldn't move his legs. He tried again. Nothing happened. They felt distant, like they belonged to someone else. The hooded figure knelt beside him, pulling back the hood. Evan blinked in confusion. The person was not human. Their skin shimmered faintly. Their eyes were a deep gold, and their features carried an elegance he had never seen before. Evan had heard stories of alien travelers, but this was the closest he had ever been to one. "I am so sorry," the stranger said, their voice soft but powerful. Evan tried to smile, though he felt dizzy. Someone was in trouble. "You do not know who I am," the stranger said, almost in disbelief. "You're someone," Evan whispered. "That's enough." For a moment, the stranger simply stared at him as if trying to understand something deeply confusing. Then they looked over their shoulder, scanning the area to make sure the attacker had truly fled. People in the market had heard the noise and were beginning to arrive, shouting for help, calling for doctors, and rushing forward with blankets. The stranger looked back at Evan with a strange mixture of sadness and respect. "The medics will take care of you," they said softly. "But I cannot stay." "Not yet." Before Evan could ask why, the stranger placed a hand gently on his shoulder, a gesture full of warmth and silent gratitude. Then they pulled their hood back up and vanished into the crowd with swift, graceful steps. Evan was carried to the medical center, where doctors quickly assessed him. They spoke calmly, kindly, telling him he would be okay, that he was safe, that they would take good care of him. He listened, but his mind felt far away. Hours later, he woke in a clean hospital bed, surrounded by machines that hummed quietly. His parents rushed to his side, holding his hands, tears in their eyes. His mother kissed his forehead again and again, whispering how scared she had been. The doctors explained gently that he had lost movement below the waist. They promised they would try every treatment available on Haven Reach. They said he had been very brave. Evan nodded weakly. He didn't regret stepping in. He couldn't imagine doing anything else. But he did wonder what happened to the hooded stranger with the golden eyes. He had saved them from harm, but he didn't even know their name. What Evan could never have guessed, what no one on Haven Reach could have imagined, was that the person he had saved was Valeth Dracorian, the Imperial Dragon of the Dracor Dominion, traveling in humanoid form. A leader whose presence was kept secret. A being of immense power and responsibility. And the entire Dominion, far across space, would soon learn that a human boy, an ordinary boy from a quiet colony, had risked everything to protect their emperor without even knowing who he was. Evan slept that night unsure of his future, unsure of what would happen next, and unsure whether the stranger he saved was safe. But far beyond Haven Reach's sky, a dragon emperor stared out of a starship window, thinking of the human boy who had stepped into danger for a stranger and had changed history forever. The stars outside the Dracor Dominion's capital world were calm that night. But inside the Grand Palace, nothing felt calm. Every hall, every balcony, every council chamber buzzed with urgent whispers. Messengers ran from room to room, advisors hurried to emergency meetings, and guards stood tense as stone, all because of one event, an event no one had expected. Their emperor, Valeth Dracorian, had almost been harmed during a secret peace mission on a small human colony world. And the one who saved him was not a trained warrior, not a diplomat, not a soldier. It was a 16-year-old human boy, a boy who did not even know who he was protecting, a boy who now lay injured in a quiet hospital, unaware that an entire empire felt a heavy weight of honor toward him. Inside a dimly lit chamber lined with glowing blue crystal walls, Valeth stood facing his advisors. His humanoid form flickered slightly in the glow, his golden eyes calm but troubled. "We must respond with strength," one advisor said firmly. "The attacker tried to harm you, my emperor. We need to investigate at once." "A human boy shielded you," another added. "By our law, we owe him a life oath. We cannot ignore this." Valeth lifted a hand gently, signaling them to quiet. "I am well," he said. "And the boy is alive." That is what matters. But one of the oldest advisors shook his head. It is more than that, my emperor. No human has ever acted with such selflessness toward our kind. Not in all our history. Another nodded. We must honor him. If the Dominion ignores this, we will dishonor our traditions. Valeth closed his eyes for a moment. Memories of Evan Calder, weak, injured, but still trying to smile, flashed through his mind. I will go to him, Valeth said quietly. The advisors gasped. You cannot reveal your identity. You cannot travel again so soon. It is unsafe. But Valeth raised his hand once more. He risked everything to protect a stranger. I will not hide behind walls while he suffers alone. No one dared argue after that. Outside the chamber, the palace lights dimmed as night deepened. But in a faraway hospital on Havenreach, Evan was just waking up. The morning light entered Evan's room softly, through a thin, white curtain that fluttered in the breeze of the ventilator machine. Evan blinked and slowly opened his eyes. His legs still felt distant, like they belonged to another world. His mother sat nearby, knitting quietly, though she kept glancing at him every few seconds. His father stood by the window, staring out with a worried expression. When Evan tried to sit up, his mother rushed to adjust his pillow. Easy, sweetheart, she said. You're still healing. Evan managed a small smile, but inside, a heavy sadness pressed against his heart. He wasn't sad because he saved someone. He didn't regret that at all, but the thought of never walking again felt like a mountain sitting on his chest. A nurse entered the room with a cheerful smile. Good morning, Evan. The doctors will check on you in an hour. You're doing very well. Evan nodded politely, but then the nurse paused. Also, there is something you should know. Evan's father turned from the window. What is it? There are visitors outside asking for Evan, the nurse said carefully. Very important visitors. Ever one. Evan blinked. Visitors? Who? Before the nurse could answer, a loud noise echoed outside, voices, shouts, and a strange humming sound. Evan's heart leaped. His mother stood up nervously. What's happening? The nurse looked unsure. They say they're from the Dracor Dominion. Evan's father nearly dropped the glass of water he was holding. The dragons? He whispered. Evan stared in confusion. Why would dragons come here? No one knew. But moments later, the door slid open, and 3 tall figures stepped inside. They were dragon envoys in humanoid form. Tall, elegant, with shimmering scales beneath their clothing. Their eyes glowed softly, and their presence filled the room with quiet authority. Evan's mother covered her mouth in shock. His father stepped protectively closer to the bed. The first envoy bowed deeply. We greet you, Evan Calder. We come with respect and gratitude. Evan's cheeks warmed. He had never spoken to a dragon before. Hello, the envoy continued. Our emperor wishes to see you. Evan almost choked on his own breath. Your emperor? Why would he want to see me? Another envoy stepped forward, their voice gentle. Because you saved his life. The room fell silent. Evan stared at them, unable to process the words. Saved? The emperor? But I didn't know. That is exactly why your action is so extraordinary, the envoy said. You protected him without knowing his status, his power, or his identity. Evan's mother wiped tears from her eyes. Oh, Evan. His father placed a hand on his shoulder with pride and fear mixed together. Will he see me? Here? Evan asked softly. A new voice spoke from the doorway. Yes. Everyone turned. Valeth Dracorian entered the room with slow, graceful steps. His hood was down now, revealing the same golden eyes Evan had seen in the alley. The Emperor looked calmer than before, but his expression carried a deep seriousness. Evan's breath caught. You're the one I saved. Valeth nodded once. Yes. Evan felt suddenly embarrassed. I'm sorry. I didn't know who you were. I just saw someone in danger. Valeth moved closer to the bed, his golden eyes filled with something that looked like admiration. And that, Evan Calder, is why your act matters even more. The Emperor placed a hand over his heart, a traditional gesture of respect among dragons. You stood between me and great harm. You risked yourself without hesitation. By our ancient law, I owe you a life oath. My life is forever tied to yours in honor. Evan shook his head quickly. No. Please, you don't owe me anything. I just did what felt right. His parents watched silently, overwhelmed, but Valeth remained firm. Evan, to us, honor is not a choice. It is a way of life. The Dominion will not forget what you did. Evan looked down at his motionless legs. But I didn't really do anything special. You did what no one else did, Valeth said softly. You acted with courage when there was no reward, no recognition, no reason except kindness. A warm silence filled the room. Evan's mother wiped another tear. His father stood straighter. His face full of pride, he tried hard not to show too openly. What will happen now? Evan asked. Valeth took a seat beside the bed. First, I will offer you the best medical treatment in the Dominion. Your body has suffered, but we have technology that may help you heal. Evan hesitated. Isn't that expensive? I don't want to take resources from your people. Valeth looked stunned, almost confused. Dragons were known for pride, strength, and powerful emotions, but Evan's simple humility left the Emperor speechless. Evan, Valeth said slowly, our resources are not so limited that helping a single person would harm us. And besides, you saved an Emperor. You saved the stability of our peace mission. I insist. Evan didn't know what to say. No one had ever insisted on helping him like this before, but then Evan raised a concern. What about the attacker? Valeth's face darkened, not in anger, but in determination. We are investigating. But you do not need to worry about that. Your safety is now under our protection. Evan nodded slowly, still overwhelmed. Valeth continued. When you are ready, we would like to take you to the Dominion. Not as a prisoner, not as a study subject, but as an honored guest. A friend. Evan's eyes widened. A friend? Yes, Valeth said simply. You have already shown you understand the value of life, human or dragon. Evan looked at his parents, unsure what they thought. But his father placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. It's your choice, Evan. We'll support whatever you decide. Evan took a deep breath. He still felt scared. He still felt confused. But beneath everything, he felt a small spark of hope. I would like to go, he said quietly. If it helps bring peace, maybe I can do something. We? Valeth smiled, a rare expression for dragon emperors. You already have. The dragon envoys bowed deeply to Evan. The room felt lighter, as if something big had just begun. Evan had saved a stranger. Now he was about to change the future of two worlds, and he didn't even know how important he was yet. The journey to the Drakor Dominion began quietly, without any grand ceremony. Evan rested in a soft medical bed inside the dragon starship, surrounded by advanced equipment that hummed gently. The room was warm and peaceful, with light blue walls that glowed softly like moonlight. Although Evan could not move his legs, he felt comfortable. The bed adjusted itself whenever he shifted, and a gentle breeze flowed from hidden vents. Everything was designed to help him heal. His mother and father stood beside him, holding his hands tightly. They were allowed to travel with him for the first part of the journey, at least until he was safely settled in the Dominion's main medical center. I'm proud of you, son, his father whispered. Evan smiled weakly. I'm just nervous. His mother brushed his hair gently. It's okay to be nervous. But remember, you are not alone. Before Evan could answer, the door slid open. Valeth entered, tall and calm, his golden eyes glowing softly in the dim light. Are you comfortable, Evan? The Emperor asked. Yes, Evan said honestly. Your ship is very peaceful. Valeth nodded, pleased. Good. We will reach the Dominion in a few hours. Our healers are already preparing for your arrival. Evan glanced at the advanced machines around him. Are you sure this isn't too much trouble? Valeth paused, studying him with a thoughtful expression. You ask that often. Evan blushed. I don't want to cause problems. You are not causing problems, Valeth replied softly. If anything, you have solved many. Evan didn't understand, but he didn't argue. He felt too tired. Valeth bowed to his parents politely. You are welcome to stay here until the next rest cycle. The journey will be smooth. His parents nodded gratefully. Valeth left quietly, but the room felt brighter after he was gone, as if his presence carried a kind of warm energy that lingered. When the ship landed on the Dominion's capital world, Evan could hardly believe what he saw. Through the large windows of the landing bay, a vast city stretched across the horizon. Tall towers made of shining crystal metal, floating bridges, glowing pathways, and gentle streams of light moving between structures like living ribbons. The sky was a soft shade of violet, with two suns glowing far above. Dragon citizens in humanoid form moved gracefully through the busy landing platforms. They wore clothing decorated with elegant symbols, and many had faint shimmering scales on their hands or necks. Evan felt very small in comparison to their tall figures and confident movements. One of the dragon healers, a calm woman named Serana, greeted him. Welcome, Evan called her. We are honored to care for you. Evan tried to smile. Thank you. Serana guided the medical team as they moved him carefully to a specialized chair that hovered softly above the ground. It felt smooth, warm, and perfectly balanced. Your parents will stay in the guest quarters, Serana explained. You may see them whenever you wish. Evan felt relieved. He didn't want them far away. The Dominion's medical center was unlike anything Evan had seen. The building was shaped like a spiraling tower of glowing silver stone. Inside, everything felt peaceful. Gentle music floated through the air, and the walls slowly changed color depending on the patient's needs. Evan was placed in a quiet room where light blue crystals glowed softly. Several machines scanned him silently, showing information in symbols he couldn't read. Serana sat beside him. Your injury is serious, she said kindly. But we have technology that can help. It will take time, but we believe there is hope. Evan looked down at his still legs. Even if I don't walk again, I'll be okay. Serana studied him with curiosity. Most people in your situation would feel anger or frustration. You do not. Evan shrugged. I don't want to spend my energy being angry. I want to focus on what I can still do. Serana nodded with respect. You are strong in a way many do not understand. Over the next few days, Evan began a slow healing routine. Dragon healers used gentle light therapy, soft vibrations, and healing waves to help his nerves respond again. Sometimes he felt small tingles in his legs. Sometimes he felt nothing at all. But he never gave up hope. Valeth visited often. Sometimes he stayed for only a few minutes. Sometimes he stayed for hours, talking with Evan about small things, stories from human life, memories from dragon history, and dreams for the future. Evan's parents watched these visits with awe. They never imagined their son would talk casually with an emperor. One evening, when the suns were setting in streams of violet light, Valeth entered with a thoughtful expression. I have something to show you, Valeth said. Evan tilted his head. What is it? Valeth waved his hand, and part of the wall transformed into a clear window showing the city outside. Dragon citizens were gathered in a huge plaza. A large screen floated above them, showing an image of Evan not from the hospital, but a drawing of him standing bravely between danger and an unknown stranger. What is this? Evan whispered. Valeth stood tall. The Dominion has learned what you did. They admire your courage. They see your kindness as a sign that humans are worthy allies. Evan felt overwhelmed. But I'm just a kid. I didn't do anything special. Valeth shook his head gently. You did something extraordinary. Dragons value strength. But we also value honor. You showed both. Evan's face warmed with embarrassment. I didn't want attention. You do not seek attention, Valeth said softly. That is why you are worthy of it. Evan had never felt so complicated in his whole life. Proud, embarrassed, happy, nervous, all at once. As days turned into a couple of weeks, Evan began to talk with more dragons. Some visited his room simply to say thank you. Others wanted to understand why a human would risk everything for someone they didn't know. Evan explained the same way every time. If someone is in danger, and you can help, you help. Dragons found this simple logic both confusing and inspiring. They began sharing stories about humanity in their communication networks. Soon, across the Dominion, the name Evan Calder became a symbol of goodwill. One day, Serana brought him a small gift, a silver pendant shaped like a rising sun. This symbol means new beginning in our culture, she said. We give it to those who inspire us. Evan touched the pendant, speechless. But not everyone in the Dominion was at peace. In the High Council chamber, some advisors whispered concerns. He is only human. He is young and fragile. Can we trust one boy with such influence? Valeth listened to all of them with patience. When they finished, he spoke calmly. Evan is not seeking power. He is not demanding rewards or influence. He is simply living with kindness. If our people wish to admire him, we should not fear it. Some advisors nodded reluctantly. Others remained unsure. But none dared challenge the Emperor's judgment. As Evan continued therapy, his legs began to respond slightly. First, small twitches, then small movements. The healers smiled each time. You are making progress, Serana said warmly. Little by little, Evan felt hopeful. Even if he never fully recovered, he was grateful for every improvement. One evening, Valeth arrived with a thoughtful look on his face. Evan, he said gently. I have been thinking. About what? Evan asked. You understand humans, Valeth said. You understand dragons. Your presence helps us speak with each other. Would you be willing to help me, more formally? Evan blinked. How? As an advisor, Valeth said. Not a political leader. Not a soldier. Just someone who offers honest thoughts. Evan's heart jumped. Me? But I don't know anything important. Valeth smiled softly. You know what truly matters. Compassion, fairness, and courage. Sometimes those are more important than political knowledge. Evan felt his chest warm with emotion. If I can help, I will. Valeth bowed his head. Then you already have. As the sun set over the glowing city, Evan watched the lights flicker across the towers. He felt small but also brave, weak but also strong, afraid but also hopeful. He was still recovering. He still had challenges to face, but he was no longer just a boy from Havenreach. He was becoming a bridge between two worlds, and his journey was far from over. The glow of the Dominion's twin suns filled the city with soft, golden light. From his room, Evan Calder watched the streets below, where dragons moved with elegant purpose, and humans, mostly visitors like him, walked carefully alongside them. Even from a distance, the harmony was noticeable. Dragons and humans, side by side, learning to trust one another. Evan leaned back in his hovering chair. His legs were still weak, but his hands moved freely. He could control the chair with ease, giving him some independence. He had accepted that walking might never be the same, but he had discovered something more important. His courage and choices mattered far beyond himself. Valeth Drakorian entered quietly, as he always did. The Emperor moved with a calm grace, his golden eyes observing Evan with warmth. You are thinking, Valeth said softly. Evan turned to the Emperor. I was thinking about home, and about all the people who never knew what happened. They will know, Valeth said, sooner than you expect. Evan frowned. How? I didn't do anything special. I just acted. That is precisely why it matters, Valeth replied. Humans are unpredictable in ways we dragons often cannot understand. You acted with no reward in mind, no fear of power, no thought for fame. That is rare even for your kind. That is why the Dominion honors you. Evan was quiet for a moment, absorbing the weight of the words. I never thought my actions would reach beyond Havenreach, he said finally. Valeth smiled faintly. They have. And they will continue to. You have inspired a bridge between humans and dragons that will last for generations. The next few weeks were busy for Evan. He met scholars, diplomats, and even warriors of the Dominion. He learned about their culture, their history, and the challenges they faced. And in turn, he shared his own simple ideas, how humans solved problems on frontier worlds, how small acts of kindness could change perceptions, and how trust was more powerful than fear. It amazed him how dragons listened. They were creatures of immense power, used to commanding respect, yet they treated him with curiosity and consideration. They asked questions not to judge, but to understand. Evan realized he had never felt more respected in his life. One afternoon, while resting in a quiet garden within the palace, Evan sat with Serana, the healer who had been with him since arrival. The garden was full of softly glowing plants, small fountains, and pathways that hovered just above the ground. "Do you ever get tired of all this attention?" Serana asked gently. Evan shook his head. "No. I'm nervous sometimes. But I want to help. I want to be useful." "You already are," Serana said. "You are teaching the Dominion that courage and kindness are powerful in their own right. You are showing them that even humans, your people, have strengths they cannot ignore." Evan felt a small surge of pride. "I never imagined anything like this would happen when I stepped into that alley." Serana smiled. "Few people do. But the universe works in strange ways." Meanwhile, far across the Dominion, news of Evan's actions spread. Halls that usually echoed with speeches about military might now carried stories of the human boy who risked everything for someone he did not know. Dragons who had never met a human before spoke of Evan with admiration. Scholars wrote about him in records that would be kept for centuries. Children drew pictures of him standing bravely, shielding the unknown figure, the Emperor, from danger. Even some of the skeptics began to change. The boy's humility, his refusal to accept reward, his courage without thinking of consequence, forced them to reconsider what it meant to be strong. Strength was not only in power or wingspan, or even intelligence, it could also be in selflessness, empathy, and integrity. Evan himself noticed it. He could feel the shift in how dragons treated humans, not as inferior beings, but as potential allies and equals, and he realized that his choice in one quiet alley on a small colony world had rippled across the galaxy. Then came the day Valeth called him to a private chamber. It was larger than any room Evan had ever seen, with walls of transparent crystal and a view of the sky above the capital city. Valeth gestured for him to sit, and Evan did, careful with his chair controls. "I have something to show you," Valeth said. Evan's curiosity piqued. "What is it?" A large floating screen appeared. On it, a map of the outer colonies, marked with small lights and symbols. Valeth began to speak. "The attack you prevented was not random. It was intended to destabilize the peace talks between the Dominion and the human colonies. If you had not acted, a chain of events would have followed that could have led to war. Entire systems might have suffered." Evan stared at the screen in disbelief. I stopped a war?" Valeth nodded. "Yes. By protecting a stranger, you preserved peace across many worlds. Your actions were small in effort, but great in consequence. That is why we honor you not only for courage, but for what you have made possible." Evan's hands trembled slightly. I never imagined." Valeth placed a hand over his own heart, the traditional dragon gesture of respect. "You never acted for recognition. That is what makes you extraordinary." Evan's mind swirled with the realization. His choice, his simple act of helping, had changed the fate of countless lives. Soon after, a formal ceremony was arranged, not for medals or titles, but for something far more meaningful. It was called the Calder Accords. Named in Evan's honor, representatives from human colonies and dragon nobility gathered in the Grand Plaza. Evan, in his hovering chair, watched as Valeth and other leaders signed agreements of cooperation, peace, and mutual respect. Humans and dragons would now work together on trade, science, defense, and culture. Evan's chest swelled with pride. He had never sought this. He had only wanted to help someone in need. Yet here he was, witnessing history. After the ceremony, Valeth came to him. "Evan Calder," he said softly. You have done what few can even imagine. You have shown both our species a better path. That is your legacy. Sendid. Perder. Sendid Dizard. Perder de Dizarder. Perder de Dizarder. Perder de Dizarder. Evan shook his head. I didn't do it for a legacy. Valeth smiled. No, and that is why it will endure. Weeks turned into months. Evan continued therapy, slowly gaining better control of his legs. He could walk short distances with assistance, and eventually use his legs with light support. But the true progress was not only physical, it was in the influence he had on those around him. Dragons began to see humans differently. Humans began to see themselves differently. Inspired by what one boy had achieved through selflessness, Evan never asked for fame. He never asked for riches. He simply continued to act with courage and kindness, and the universe responded in ways he could not have imagined. And then one evening, as the twin suns set behind the Capitol towers, Valeth joined him on the balcony of his room. The city lights flickered below like stars come to rest. You have changed the Dominion, Valeth said. And not through force, not through weapons, not through strategy, but through your heart. Evan looked down, humbled. I just did what felt right. Valeth placed a hand on his shoulder. That is exactly why it was so powerful. The two stood in silence, watching the city glow beneath them. Humans and dragons alike were now connected in a way that would last generations, and at the center of it all was a 16-year-old boy from a quiet colony world who had taken a risk simply because he could not stand by. Evan knew he would always face challenges. He knew there were risks ahead, and battles of a different kind to fight. But he also knew something else. He had discovered a kind of strength greater than anything he had ever imagined. A strength that came not from wings, claws, or power, but from courage, selflessness, and the willingness to act for what was right. And in that moment, Evan Calder understood the truth. A single act of bravery, done with no expectation of reward, could change the world. He had saved a dragon emperor. He had prevented a war. And he had shown the galaxy that even a human, small, fragile, young, could leave a mark that would be remembered forever. As night fell over the Dominion's capital, the stars above seemed brighter than ever. And Evan, smiling quietly to himself, felt at peace, for he had discovered what it truly meant to be human, and why humanity was worthy of respect across the universe.